Hey there, my name is James Wolfen, and today I wanted to share with you my vision for how we could potentially better manage lawns here in the United States, specifically by using what I'm calling a native bee lawn mix. And what a native bee lawn mix is, it's a mixture of low input turfgrass, so turfgrass that doesn't require all too much management, with low growing native wildflowers to create this beautiful matrix of grasses and flowers that maintains the general recreation and function associated with a traditional turfgrass lawn while adding some much needed food for our at risk native pollinators. So this idea of bee lawns is actually something that I've been studying for a while now, where this is actually a picture of me doing my graduate student research at the University of Minnesota. Here you can see me kind of digging through the clover, looking for bees on those flowers. And we were actually incredibly excited by the results we found on that original bee lawn mix, where we saw more than 65 species of bees on the bee lawn flowers in the state of Minnesota. This was actually more than like 15% of the bees in the entire state, so that number really blew us away. The most common question that I received about that Belon mix was, could we potentially develop a version of the mix that used all native wildflowers, where the original version used two non-native species, so even though it was found to support a ton of bee species, there were lots of folks that were asking about a native version of the mix. So this is something that I've been thinking about for quite a while now, and what I'm actually really excited to do is show that we've actually come up with a native version of that Belon mix. So one holdover from the original mix is Self-Heal, this beautiful kind of purple flower that does really great work for larger bumblebees and also some really small bees. I'll talk about how that works in just a second. We've also got Yak Yarrow, a beautiful white flower. What's really great about this flower, in addition to supporting bees, is its low input nature. And also Sisyrinchium angustifolium, better known as narrow-leaved blue-eyed grass, or all sorts of variety of blue-eyed grass is kind of a there's lots of synonyms for this flower here, but a beautiful flower that does a really great job of supporting our sweat bees, and also just a beautiful color. I love the blue with the yellow there, and more importantly, the bees really love the blue with the yellow there, where that works really great for kind of their visual spectrum. So what's also really important to consider about these flowers is their bloom times. It's something that I consider with every single mix that I make, where the blue-eyed grass blooms early in the spring. So do note there's tremendous variation in this, where what's spring in Texas is very different from what's spring in Minnesota. So I'm just going to keep it pretty simple by using seasons rather than months, where months are more regionally dependent. And the yak yarrow and the self-heal bloom in spring and summer. Sometimes the self-heal and yak yarrow can even bloom a little bit into the fall here in Minnesota, but generally I see generally I see the self-heal start to stop blooming around August. Sometimes maybe the very end of August, dipping into the beginning of September, and the yak yarrow maybe just a little bit earlier than that for when the blooms kind of start to end. So something that I really like to do is kind of do a deep dive into each of the flowers, discussing their value for pollinators and kind of how they would function in your yard. So on self-heal, something that's really fun is we see both really large and really small bees on it. The large bees made a ton of sense. It's got a little bit of a larger bloom, and you could kind of see the longer floral neck on that flower. So when we saw bumblebees on that flower when I was doing my original bee lawn research, it was exactly what we expected. What kind of surprised me a little bit was to find smaller bees on this flower, where the question is, they're teeny tiny. How do they reach that nectar and pollen? And the best way to describe this is it's actually just incredibly cute, where the smaller bees crawl right into the flower. They crawl right down the floral neck, grab their nectar, grab their pollen, and fly away. This is a great plant for full to part sun areas. Some of the parks that I established it at, so I did all of my research in public parks. Some of them were full sun, some of them had quite a bit of shade, and the self-heal really kind of flourished in the shade. It established in the full sun areas as well, but a little bit of shade is perfect for this flower. And it's a great source of both nectar and pollen for bees. Now looking at the yak yarrow, what's fun about this is it attracts both bees and butterflies, but what I think kind of separates this a little bit from the other flowers included in the mix is its low input nature. So if you want to have a lawn where you're kind of reducing your watering, you're reducing your mowing, you're reducing all of those inputs, yak yarrow actually thrives in those circumstances. If you live somewhere where the weather can be a little bit dry in the summer, yak yarrow has incredible drought tolerance. It also responds really well to disturbances. In the context of your lawn, that means two things: wear damage, things like running around, walking all over the vegetation, and also mowing. So this plant responds really well to mowing. It'll even kind of sometimes observe more blooms after mowing. And the narrow-leaved blue-eyed grass, what I think is most exciting about this plant is, in addition to being attractive to bees and butterflies, it also produces seeds that songbirds like. So that's always fun. Um, I kind of view this as like the canary in the coal mine of the bee lawn flowers, where if you're trying to figure out when should I water my bee lawn, this is kind of a good indicator plant, where this plant does prefer some moisture. So when you start to see this looking a little bit dry, looking like it needs a little bit of help, that's a good indicator. Hey, maybe I should be watering my lawn. And once again, I mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. For me, the real key to this flower is its colors. When you think about the bee visual spectrum, they like their violets, their blues, and their yellows. And this flower presents just that, where the petals have that beautiful blue color, and the center of the flower has that beautiful, deep, rich yellow. You can kind of even see some striping on each of the petals, and it kind of functions as a nectar guide of sorts, showing the bees where they can get their food. So another really important part of all of this is thinking about lawn inputs. So I'm a bee conservationist by nature. It's something I've been doing for 10 years, but I think it's also important to just think about how we manage our lawns, where we're often mowing, we apply tons of irrigation, and we also apply quite a bit of fertilizer. Each of these are a source of emissions. Every time we mow, we're burning fossil fuels. Every time we apply irrigation, we're using much needed water. And every time we're fertilizing, we're adding some nitrogen and phosphorus to our ground. These all have their kind of own, what I call carbon cost. And to take a bit of a deeper look at that and kind of how much good we can all be doing, I want to quickly summarize this paper from the Journal of Environmental Management, where what the authors did was they compared the emissions associated with low input lawns and high input lawns, where a high input lawn is your traditional lawn, flowerless, probably using Kentucky bluegrass, and a low input lawn, it's all about species selection, where the main grass used in a low input lawn is some sort of fescue, generally either tall fescue or fine fescue. The bee lawns happen to use low input fine fescue grass. And what they found was super important, where they found that low input lawns have about 1/3 the management and carbon costs as compared to high input lawns. And your bee lawn, whether it's the native bee lawn or the original bee lawn, will absolutely be qualified as a low input lawn because they use fine fescue grasses. So that's all I've got for you. I hope this was an exciting introduction to what a bee lawn is, what a native bee lawn is, and kind of how you can reimagine how you manage your lawns. If you want to learn more about this, visit twincityseed.com. That's where I post everything bee lawn related. And I also do a ton of educational workshops through bluethumb.org. So I hope this was exciting to you. If you thought this was interesting, please consider giving us a follow on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we're on there. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this inspires you to manage your lawn in a way that helps bees, in a way that helps the environment. And I'm sure the bees will thank you as well.